We've all played games before, right?
Yeah!
Well, there's this little thing at the beginning of a game called a tutorial, the time and or place where the game teaches you how to play, whether it be integrated into the first level of the game or be its own separate level entirely. The tutorial is always there, because we need it. But do we? The year is not 1985 anymore. We're not just getting our grubby little hands on Mario Brothers for the first time, which everybody knows was the first video game. It is the year of our Lord 2024, Year of the Dragon. We've all played at least one game before, so maybe we can assume by now that everybody knows left stick to move, spacebar to jump. Do we still need to do that thing at the start of games, where the player has to duck under something and then jump over something? You know what I'm talking about. Not even 30 seconds into the game, there will be an obstacle blocking your path with a perfectly crouch-sized hole. The game comes to a halt and says, press control to crouch, press space to jump, like you're a little baby. You can see it coming from a mile away now, because basically every game nowadays will have this crouchy jumpy section. We've all seen it 100 times by now. Ducked under fallen trees, jumped over fallen trees, kicked down fallen trees. So can't we just get rid of this part? Instead of jumping over a fallen tree, how about we jump straight into the gameplay? Haha. There are some games that don't have tutorials. For instance, it's ironic I mentioned Mario earlier because it actually doesn't have a tutorial. Yeah, it had the manual, you smartass, but you don't need it. If you were thrown into the level and given the controller, you would figure it all out pretty quickly. Move, jump, sprint, you're good to go. I played Cocoon recently. That game didn't have a tutorial and I survived. When the game begins, you get dropped into this weird geometrical world with no knowledge of where you are, what to do, or how to play. But the controls were really simple to figure out though. Move with the left stick and press A to do everything else. Vampire Survivors and Grease don't have any tutorials at the beginning either. The games begin and there is nothing telling you what to do. But all you need to know is move and just move actually, that's all you can do. So these games do exist, but are they better than games with a tutorial? Probably not. I mean, it works for these games because they're simple. There's not too much for the player to figure out. But in a game with more complexity and more advanced features, tutorials in one form or another are necessary. I don't even understand how to play Civilization after doing the tutorial. Without a tutorial, there are just certain things that a player may never figure out in their entire playthrough. Like this streamer who didn't know about several basic mechanics in Breath of the Wild until they had already played for 95 hours.
Do a backflip? You can charge attacks?
Not to mention all the people out there who have never played or have played very few video games. In Rasputin's Gaming for a Non-Gamer, he shows how his wife struggled to play a variety of games because she didn't have much prior experience or understanding of the mechanics that are similar across all video games. Without tutorials, people like her would be even more lost. Okay, so maybe we do need tutorials to learn about the things we wouldn't find by ourselves. But the thing is,
we don't like tutorials.
They're annoying. Am I right, gamers?
Yeah!
Players hate tutorials. They do not want them in the game. If you look online for 2 seconds, you can find dozens of threads of people complaining about tutorials and how much they hate them. Maybe you don't like them either. I mean, you clicked on a video called "Do Games Still Need Tutorials?" So maybe you're a part of that crowd. There is such a stigma online around these short sections at the start of a game. But why? Okay, well, if you shut up and listen, I'll tell you why. Jeez. There are a few different ways that developers typically do tutorials, but each one of these methods have their own flaws, which make it annoying, boring, confusing, whatever. Like when you play a new board game, there are 2 ways to go about it. Either your friend will tell you all of the rules at once, which isn't the best because you're getting so much information without fully understanding the context of it all, while also wasting everybody's time. Or they go, oh yeah, nah, just start playing and you'll figure it out. And eventually you will figure it out. But you won't understand things until they've already happened to you. You're not really playing with any plan, just going with the flow. Some games follow the first method, telling you everything up front, get it all out of the way right at the start, and then let you have basically free reign. However, it can be really annoying for a couple of reasons. First of all, it can feel like a waste of time or an inconvenience. If a player has just bought the game and booted it up for the first time, They want to play the game. If they have to spend an hour stuck in a tutorial, they're gonna get real peeved, buddy. Or they're gonna get real angry, and they're gonna post "I hate tutorials" all over Reddit. And the hate isn't entirely unwarranted, especially if they already know that stuff from other games or could figure it out on their own. Far Cry Blood Dragon's tutorial pokes fun at tutorials that do this, while doing the same thing that it's poking fun at. So is this a good tutorial or a bad one? The other reason that this method of tutorial can be annoying is information overload. If the game dumps everything on you all at once, chances are you're not going to absorb all of that information. You're going to forget some of it. At the beginning of Half-Life, the player gets taught how to long jump, but the long jump isn't required until one of the final levels, which led to a lot of people not knowing what to do and eventually saying, "I can long jump?" A lot of games, like the aforementioned Cocoon, Mario, and Vampire Survivors, follow the second method of letting you figure out the game on your own. In these games, it works because the gameplay is very simple. But this method is also really popular among survival games, like Minecraft, Terraria, Subnautica, and Stardew Valley, to name a few. They don't have much guidance in the game beside maybe a recipe book. The big issue with this type of tutorial, or lack thereof, is that when you play these games for the first time, you have to tab out to the wiki every 5 minutes. If you play the game without any external help, you wouldn't even understand the most basic stuff. The wiki is essentially like a manual that players must have on hand. And the third method of tutorial is somewhat in the middle, where the game gives you pop-ups or information throughout the game whenever it's relevant. This option is usually better than the other two. In a game like Hollow Knight, it works great. The game doesn't overload you with information at the start, allowing you to figure out the basics of movement on your own. But whenever you get a new ability, there is a small pop-up with information on it. Sadly, this type of tutorial can be annoying too. When it's not implemented well, the pop-ups can be incredibly jarring and completely break the flow of gameplay, pulling you out of the world and forcing you to do the required reading. The most notable example I can think of is Doom Eternal. There are so many humongous pop-ups in the middle of gameplay here. The worst part of it is that every boss is introduced with a pop-up. You have to come to a complete halt to read this wall of text about how to kill the boss that you haven't even fought yet. I have no idea why they thought this was a good idea. Instead of, I don't know, letting you fight the boss yourself, they pull you aside beforehand and say, okay, to kill this guy, you just gotta keep him at medium range and make him do this attack, then wait until his eyes turn green and shoot him. Oh, you wanted to figure it out by yourself? But we just told you. Why would you? All of the methods I talked about have their own flaws, which make them uniquely annoying. It's no wonder that people don't like tutorials. But there must be something better than this, another way. The solution here is to have no tutorials, at least not in the traditional sense. There is a fourth method which I haven't talked about yet and is easily the best option. Some games manage to teach the player without traditional tutorials. No text pop-up, no information overload, just players figuring things out for themselves while being gently guided in the right direction without realizing it. I'm talking about invisible tutorials. These are done without shoving information down the throats of players, but instead placing them into an environment which is built to help them learn. The first level in Mega Man X will teach you everything you need to know without making you read a line of text. By slowly introducing new obstacles one at a time, you can figure out how to overcome them. The mechanics are taught through the level design, and by putting the player in a relatively low-stakes scenario, where they won't be punished harshly for not knowing how the game works. Hollow Knight does the exact same thing. You have to move, jump, and break walls to progress, but if you fall, that's okay. The game puts you in an environment where you can learn. And if you really don't know what to do, only then will the game give you a hint on how to continue. This is a great tutorial, because for those who know video games, they'll breeze right past it without even knowing it's a tutorial. But those who don't can still be taught from the subtle guidance. Or there's the example which is mentioned in every video about tutorials, Half-Life 2. You see a guy pinned to a wall with a saw blade. There are saw blades blocking your path. You pick one up, an enemy walks out, you throw the blade at the enemy. Boom. The game just taught you without saying a word. These tutorials are still doing their job, letting you learn the mechanics of the game, but they're doing it in a much nicer environment which is less intrusive and interruptive. So, do we still need tutorials? Yeah. but they could be a whole lot better most of the time. It does take more effort to make a good invisible tutorial, but game design like this is the ultimate solution to the annoying, boring, condescending tutorials that people hate. I'm hopeful that one day these tutorials will go extinct and be replaced by something better. On the second channel, I recently uploaded a review of a really cool bullet hell game, so if you want to watch another video, you should check that out. And Games I Beat in February is out now exclusively on Patreon. If you want to support the channel and get some perks, including monthly bonus videos, the link is in the description. Thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel: Liam Blackford, Owen Freer, Rian, and Crafting the Music. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.